Hi guys,
Hello.
your voice is audible.
Yeah,
I can hear you okay.
loud and clear.
Great.
Can you
Thank
hear
you.
us?
Start the day so that easy for everyone to understand and know each other as we have a time for the audience and for the people who have just joined. Thanks a lot for joining. Good morning and good evening to everyone who have joined today from all parts of the world. Hope you and your family are doing safe in this tough COVID time. Today we will be conducting the webinar, as you all know. This is what is the future of AI for banking and financial services sector. So now to introduce me and my company to you, to everyone. My name is Nitin Naveen and I am Vice President Innovation and Strategy at AI CodeSpot. I'll be host for the day. Further, I have been joined by my couple of colleagues. Arvind Kannan is there and Naveen Kumar is there, who will also assist me in keeping the event lively. So thanks a lot to them for putting in such a hard work and making this one a huge success. In AI CodeSpot, our aim is to be number one AI-driven community all over the world so that like-minded people can be a part of the same in supporting, growing, and making this a huge success. Our mission is to serve as a hub for information regarding the Industry 4.0 technologies, which encompass and not limited to the emerging ones like artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, robotics, blockchain, IoT, edge computing, analytics, 5G, drone, edge AI, digital twin, AR, VR, cloud, and so on. We'll continue to do industry-backed webinars and hybrid events. Obviously, face-to-face events are not there at this point. Once it will start, we'll also do face-to-face events. The knowledge repository, whatever will be shared, will be made from reliable data through industry leaders and the subject matter experts, the thought leaders who are there. We'll enrich the content through videos, blogs, podcasts, newsletters, and digital content to share a light on the Industry 4.0. Request all of you to go through our website for any future updates. Also, please like our social media handles, which will keep you all updated on everything what we propose to offer. Now coming to today's event, this is one series of webinar which we have planned this month. There are lots more in store for subsequent months as well, like next month we have in insurance, the next month we have in manufacturing, and it will go on. So request all of you to keep connected with us and enjoy the learning. Before starting the day, I would like to highlight few things so that it can set up the tone for the day, for the amazing learning and networking for all the people who are just joined. First thing, obviously, special mention to our technology partner, Digit7, who has helped us in understanding our vision and supporting us to create a platform through which we can achieve our objectives. Their support is immense, and we are there because of them. Innovation is the cornerstone for Digit7. And as the old adage goes, first never follows. And to be number one, you have to be unique. So that is the uniqueness of Digit7. Innovative business process is the need of the hour, and Digit7 is a catalyst of information through products that symbolify innovation through automation. You all can go through Digit7 website, which is www.digit7.io, and understand more in depth. Also, thanks to all our community partners, including RBC, EY, to make this event a huge success. A special mention to all the speakers who have joined with us, all the attendees of the event who registered and came today to understand from these quality speakers so that their objectives can be achieved through this forum. At the end of the day, if you gain few things out of today's event, we'll be more than happy as a company. The third point, there will be a couple of polls which you will be conducting throughout the day in between for this 1 hour webinar. The message will be broadcasted to everyone. As soon as you see the same, kindly attempt at them. It will give you some insight into the questions. If anybody want to ask the question to the speakers, very important point, they can do that after the end of each session. So when a speaker is speaking, let them speak, and you can jot down the points. You can put those questions in the Q&A section. There's a Q&A section which you can see on the right corner of the menu option. You can also even raise the hand. So there's a hand button like that in the bottom. When you will click on that, you can come to the stage like we are there. You can see all of us. So you can also come to the stage and ask questions to the speakers as well. So there can be both the options. Either you can raise the hand or you can type in the Q&A section. Now, I'll quickly go through the agenda and let you all get introduced to the speakers and their topic so that easy for you to understand the flow for the day. Let me share the screen so that easy for you all to understand. Sorry, can you see the screen?
Yep.
Any one of you? Yeah, sure. So all of you must have gone through this website because this is a registration website and you must have seen the agenda. I'll just quickly go through it so that easy for the people to understand what is in the flow. So exactly at 9, we'll be starting. So we have some time. We'll be starting with Adi, who is the director in RBC. His topic obviously is in front, conversational AI for IT support. Then we have Abhishek, who is ex-vice president, digital transformation and business, or Pfizer. He was in Pfizer. His topic is digital transformation of operations, how it should be done to strengthen the product market fit. Then we have Timothy Young, who is the associate director and Canada product lead for EY. His topic is leveraging AI, ML, and other advanced technologies to fight fin crime. So excellent topics, excellent thought process, and I think there's a lot of learning which can be done through all these talks. So without wasting any time, may I invite our first speaker. Adi is there. So Obviously I told his topic to you. So I'll just give an abstract also, Adi, to the audience so that let them have a feel of you. And then obviously you can share your screen and you can continue with the talk. So Adi topic, the abstract of the topic, conversational AI for IT support. Obviously Adi will do all the talking and he has a great slides to talk to. I'll give you an abstract, what it is all about, because he has given me some details. A prominent theme in enterprises in general and financial institutions in particular is how they use AI to reduce the IT operational cost. So Adi will be talking about the role of conversational AI in RBCs. This is one of the largest bank in market cap in Canada. What strategy they are using to reduce IT support calls by 60% over the next 5 years and describe the product strategy, tech strategy, and talent strategy for enabling conversational AI in RBC. Hope I am correct, Adi.
Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll let you do the talking and give all the insights to the audience so that they are okay. And audience, after his talk, you can obviously put your question answers. If you have any questions with Adi, just feel free to ask questions. We'll give you the time for that. Yeah, Adi, over to you. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you, Nitin, for that introduction. Perfect. Sets the stage very nicely. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly well.
Okay, cool. Now, let me figure out how to share my screen here.
Yes.
All right. Can you guys?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, cool. Perfect. All right. So, well, thank you, first of all, Nitin, for having me here. I'm super excited to be here, super excited to, share this talk with you. Like Nitin said, the theme of my conversation is really going to be how do you enable conversational AI in your business, really learning from our experience at RBC. And, even though, and as Nitin mentioned, the use case that I have been leading, over the last couple of years was based on IT support. You can take these learnings and kind of apply them, right? The learnings are generally applicable, even if you were, looking at a problem in your customer-facing advice center, for example. So I'll also, talk broadly about why do you need conversational AI? What capabilities do you need to enable conversational AI in your business? And then I'll also share with you some lessons that we've learned, through our journey with, implementing conversational AI at RBC. So, our customers and employees have a ton of conversations with us every day. And I'm sure the same is true, for your businesses. So, In our case, for example, in a banking, financial services organization, on the client side, we have, people asking questions such as, I want to grow my business, right? So how can I raise, how can I raise equity, or how can I borrow money? Or I want a home for my family, can you help me get a mortgage? On the other hand, employees are asking us questions such as, I want to grow in my career, I want the right healthcare for my family, and so on. Now, these are, very human, complex questions, but the reality is that a good chunk of these conversations are actually really mundane and really monotonous. So, a large fraction of the conversations that we're having with our customers are actually things such as, can you raise the limit on my debit card, right? Or can I order checks, or can I get a money order? And the same, if I was to, type on the employee side, it's things such as, I forgot my password. Can you unlock my account for me? Or I'm running out of storage on my email. Can you increase my email storage? Right? And this, right, like this, answering, questions such as these, or resolving issues such as these, this is not a good use of human talent, right? These are not instances where, our employees, based on, their expertise, are helping, people make a better life, achieve goals in their life, and develop relationships. This is just us helping them, remove a certain obstacle that's facing them, in their day. So this is not somewhere where we want to deploy our highly talented workforce. Um, and this is a scenario that's playing out at enterprise contact centers, or, and it's just like these places, or these sort of teams are called by different names: contact centers, aka call centers, aka advice centers, aka service desks, across industries globally. So this is a common scenario. It's a typical challenge that's facing organizations everywhere, which is, you have an overwhelmed and really costly contact center. Um, if I was to describe this, or to sort of make it real for you, with the example of RBC, we receive 1 million calls every year at our service desk. The end users, the people who are calling the desk, aren't necessarily having a great experience. They don't want to call the desk. They just don't have another option. And a majority of these issues, like I was saying before, are not really complex, high-value conversations. These are monotonous and predictable issues. If you look at the top 10 or 20 call drivers, they remain more or less the same month after month. And this situation was actually pretty bad already before Corona, before COVID, before the pandemic. So this is actually, a real chart where, before COVID hit, we were getting, around 80,000 calls at the service desk every month, which is crazy because we have 80,000 employees at RBC. And these call volumes shot, went through the roof in the middle of the pandemic, and they stabilized, a few months after. However, what's happened, and this is not just specific to RBC, this is an industry-wide phenomenon, that call volumes at contact centers have fundamentally, stabilized at a level that is fundamentally higher than what it was before the pandemic hit. So the pandemic has made the situation worse. And that's where conversational AI comes in. The promise of conversational interfaces is a better user experience, a better customer experience, a better employee experience, while reducing lower operating costs for employee and customer-facing contact centers. And that's why we are in this space. Now, for those of you who are completely new to this space, I'm going to walk you through very, very simply. So what is a conversational interface? Let's say you have a customer or an employee that has a problem. So, let's say they say, I'm having a problem logging into my email this morning. This is what we call a user utterance in the IVE or in the conversational space. This utterance is then processed by NLU, and NLU stands for Natural Language Understanding. And the Natural Language Understanding service really identifies the intent of the user. So a user can describe the same problem, or different users can describe the same problem in different ways. They can articulate the same problem in different ways. You might say, I have a problem logging to email. Someone else might say, oh, I can't use Outlook this morning. And someone else might say, well, my mail isn't working, right? But it's the same intent, though, just expressed in different fashions. So the NLU classifies the intent of the user. And the second thing that your NLU, or your natural language understanding service, does is what we call entity extraction. So it really grabs, the other contextual parameters that really add, additional information to the intent. So for example, in this case, the NLU will have a back and forth dialogue with the user to really understand, well, all right, you're trying to, resolve an issue with your email, but what kind of client are you using? What kind of operating system are you on, and so on. So really, the point of an NLU is to classify the intent of the user and to extract entities that really add contextual information to the intent. And once you do that, right, once you understand the user's intent and you understand the contextual information about it, well, then you can actually do something about it, right? Now you understand enough about the user's problem, then you can then do what we call fulfillment in the space, which is provide an answer or resolution, right? This could be you either present an article to the user and say, well, hey, follow these steps, or you execute a service for them and say, hey, I just did something for you, or place an order for them, and so on. Now, these conversations can be really simple. So, this is an example of, a conversation with a bot where, the user is saying, well, hey, can you help me add a personal mailbox to Outlook? The bot says, well, tell me what device are you using? So, the bot is really, the bot's identified their intent, and now it's trying to extract, contextual information. And then it presents some content and say, well, do this, right? So this is a really simple example. However, this can also get extremely complex. I'm not going to show you a very complex flow right now. I'm going to save that for later when I'm actually talking through conversational design. But what I want to get into right now is, so what capabilities do you really need in your business to enable experiences such as these for your employees and for your customers? And at RBC, our point of view is that you need three foundational capabilities. One is you need a decoupled platform agnostic architecture. Second is you need really strong conversational design. And number three is what we call enabling AI. So not the NLU AI, which does all of the entities, the intent classification and entity extraction, but all the other kinds of machine learning and AI that you're going to have to do to make this a success. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And the idea is that on these three foundational capabilities, you do three things. You build a great support staff experience. So these are the agents who are picking up the call and actually helping users. You provide a great conversational designer experience, and I'll speak in a little bit about what conversation design is. And you deliver, all of these things really then orchestrate an amazing end user experience, whether your end user is an employee or a customer. Let me, get right into the number one sort of building or foundational block for an NLE or for a conversational design capability, which is that decoupled platform agnostic architecture. Now, the one thing that you want to avoid doing in this space, at least at the moment, is you want to avoid vendor lock-in. So you don't want to be in a position where you have signed a multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract with a vendor that's going to supply all of the tools and technologies that you're going to need to build your chatbot or IVA or your conversational interface. This is a very fast-changing space. You want to retain the flexibility and the ability that if tomorrow, a different vendor or a different provider, develops a greater capability in a certain area, then you can take advantage of that. So you want to avoid that vendor lock-in. Second is, what we figured out pretty early on is you want to use best-in-class natural language understanding in a secure fashion. So I just described what that NLU does, right? It determines the intent of the user and extracts the contextual information around that intent. Now, all of the biggest players in the industry, the biggest cloud service providers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they all provide their own natural language understanding capabilities. If you're not one of these companies, you are never going to be able to build an NLU that is as robust as one of the ones that are provided by these technology companies, just because of the advantages they have in terms of their intellectual property and the enormous amount of data they have. You, instead of trying to build your own NLU, what you want to do is you want to leverage these external one of these NLUs in a secure fashion. And that's what this modular platform agnostic architecture allows you to do. You can use one today and you can plug it out and plug a different one in tomorrow. It allows in-flight integrations with backend systems for that personalized and automated experience. So you can plug in into different services that your business has to run automated stuff for your user. And it also allows infinite integrations with front-end channels. So you're not now a Slack bot or a WebEx bot or a Microsoft bot or a Facebook bot or a WhatsApp bot, but you are really an omni-channel bot. And so if I was to provide, a conceptual view of what I'm talking about, it's really all about the middleware. So what you want is for your bot to really essentially be this middleware that can, take advantage of these services that sit in your company, such as, your client and employee information for personalization, all sorts of other platforms and content repositories, service and APIs, and then also be able to hook into these external, services and APIs such as natural language understanding, and then integrate with, whatever front end channels you want to integrate with. They could be Facebook or web or, WhatsApp or Slack or WebEx Teams. But really, your bot should be the middleware. At least that's our point of view. And at RBC, we've built this middleware from scratch, but you can also buy these off the shelf and then start building on top of that. Gartner writes a lot about the importance of having strong bot middleware. So that's all about architecture. The second big capability, and perhaps the most critical capability, is conversation design. So now, I touched upon, before that, your conversational flows with the bot can get very complex. Now, let me actually show you an example of a complex one. So here's a user that says that their network drive has disappeared and if the bot can help. And the bot asks a question, which the user supplies the answer to, and the bot gives them, a resolution. However, this doesn't work for the user. And so in this case, the bot says, well, let's try something else, right? And it provides, a different resolution, which also does not work for the user, right? And so the bot pulls out another trick from its bag of tricks and says, well, let's try this. And this doesn't work for the user either. And that's when the bot gives up and says, well, let me connect you to, a service desk agent. And in this case, the bot then takes the information about the user, takes the history of this conversation, packages it all up, and transfers the user along with all of this information to a service desk agent, who then gets the benefit of having all of that information at their disposal, so they can help the user, in a very efficient way. So this is a more complicated, resolution flow. Now, the process flow for this, so you can, I think, if you look at this flow, you can already sort of guess that this is like a tree kind of structure, right? This conversation could have potentially taken multiple different paths if the user had made different choices, right? So when you map out the process flow behind this, it actually, and I'm not kidding you, if you print this process flow out, you can cover like an entire kind of dining table size space. It's a very, very complex process flow, which, people who understand process and people who, business analysts understood, the process behind this and created the process flow. However, if you leave the conversation design to, devs or BAs who are untrained in conversation design, the user experience will be as unintuitive as this process flow is incomprehensible. What I'm trying to say here is that there is a bridging between process diagrams and the actual user experience, which is conversational design. And conversational design is the process of designing a natural two-way interaction between a user and a system based on the principles of human-to-human conversation. So what you see over here is the bot isn't really giving the user a process flow. It's actually having a back and forth dialogue with them, right? It is framing choices in a certain way. It's also responding, right? If you look at the tonality of the language and the phrases that it's using, it is responding in a very human fashion. And that is the realm of conversational design. Now, when it comes to conversational design, the principles are ultimately anchored in linguistics. So, so for example, your language should be cooperative, turn-based. This is how human beings talk to each other, right? When you stop someone on the road and ask for directions, right, and that person tries to help you, there is a fundamental linguistic principle at play there, which is human beings try to cooperate with each other when we have a conversation with each other. It's also turn-based, right? Generally speaking, you take turns when you're talking to each other. It's not just that one person keeps on talking for an hours and hours on end. That's not a conversation. Strong copywriting and writing skills also matter. And then a bot persona is also critical. So what you'll notice here in this conversation is that, The bot is if you look at enough utterances of the bot, you will start seeing that there's a persona at play here. It's a very empathetic persona, which we decided early on would be critical in the realm of IT support. You have to have empathy for the user because they're facing a problem. And so having all of these things together, right? The principles of conversation design that are ultimately anchored in linguistic, strong copywriting and writing skills, and the ability to have a bot that aligns with the persona. All of these things matter, and they're all in this realm of conversational design. And you're not going to succeed without this. I used to when I would do presentations like these, I used to frame this differently. I would say you will fail if you don't have conversational design. And people then came to me and they're like, why do you have to be so negative all the time? So I reframed it a little bit, but I still want to re-emphasize that you can build a bot without that platform agnostic architecture. You can build a bot without that enabling data science. You just buy an LU off the shelf, but it will suck if you don't pay attention to conversational design. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this presentation, it's this. We at RBC continue to build out a very strong conversational design capability. So, Nitin was earlier talking about how, I was going to touch upon the talent aspects also. So this is it, right? We created a dedicated conversational design team with high-performing people from that had background in communications, writing, UX design, accessibility. We really wish we could get a linguist. I know that in Bank of America, their team looks, they're doing similar things in the Bank of America, which, if you don't know, is the largest bank in the US. And their team is 50% linguists, right? So it just goes to show, like how important this is. And also, there aren't many conversational designers out there, right? If you go right now to monster.com or whatever, or LinkedIn, and you look for conversational designers, this is a very new space, right? So very often you'll just end up having to build this talent up from scratch. We upskill these people, and we really built them up. We also provided tools, right? So we provided purpose-built conversational design tools. We built an app so convo designers can edit, what the bot says or the language that the bot uses without requiring, a developer to help them. And we also built analytics dashboards for them so they could really understand how their conversations were performing and how they could improve them. And then we also built a process for conversation-driven development. So this is what our process looks like. We identify, what topic our bot is going to solve. And then there's this conversation design process where we do research, we document the process flow. I showed you that complex diagram before. Then we do conversation design, we test it with users, and then we ultimately implement it. The final foundational pillar is that enabling AI. And really to kind of clarify what I mean by enabling AI, it is all of the artificial intelligence, or essentially machine learning modeling work, that excludes everything other than the core natural language understanding aspect. For example, the intent classification, not for example, but which is really the intent classification and entity extraction, aspect. So as I said before, we made a strategic choice that we are not going to build this ourselves, right? The intent classification, entity extraction, we are using an external service for that, but there is still a whole bunch of data science oriented work that you still have to do to enhance the user experience, and that's what I call enabling AI. It really enhances your core user experience, agent experience, and conversational designer experience. And I'll give you some examples of that. So, I showed you a couple examples, right, of the user, of the bot saying, the bot helping a user with adding a mailbox or helping them get their Y drive back. How do you know those are the right problems to solve, right? So this is, we do a whole bunch of topic modeling work on, our help desk call and chat data to really understand what are the biggest intents. Why are people calling us? And then secondly, once we've identified that, how do we prepare that training data set that we can use to then train our natural language understanding service to recognize these intents? And then also monitor them over time, right? How are they performing? Do we need to introduce new intents? Do we need to tweak the existing ones, and so on? Also, we are using predictive analytics to really predict what issue a user might be having. So, for example, for our IT support assistant, when you come and you interact with it, it will give you these options, and these change based on who you are. Right. So based on who you are, it will try to predict what might be, some of the issues that you might be, interacting with a service desk about. And we actually have a model that predicts like around 75-80% of the time what issue a user might be, coming to the desk with. The second aspect is enhancing the agent and the designer experience. So just to quickly define what I mean by an agent is really the person, the human being on the service desk side that picks up the phone, right? So in this world of conversational interfaces, this is the person that a user or a customer would be handed over to if the bot determines that they can't help the user. And their experience, as you can imagine, is also very critical. So, what we are looking at, and these are things that we are just now starting to explore, is based on the nature of the question or the problem that the issue is having, how do we route that user to the best to the agent that has the best skill set to be able to serve them. When we hand a user over to an agent, then the agent, instead of having to read through an entire history of conversation, how can we use summarization algorithms to really summarize the entire conversation for the agent. As the user is having a conversation with the agent, how can we actually give recommendations to the agent on, hey, service desk agent, here's an article based on what the user is saying here. I think that this content might actually help the user, right? So really assist the agent in delivering a great experience to your customer. And then also just monitor this data, right? So you've got people coming in and chatting with your service desk or contact centers all day long. You kind of want to see if there's something strange going on, right? If something is off, it's moving average. And then kind of, do some alerting so that you can nip things in the bud in case there is like a larger outage and stuff. So that is something that we also do. And then also, the other promise of, this enabling AI is to provide NLP-based insights on usage. So what are people actually talking about today? Is it different from what people were talking about yesterday? And really providing this data in real time. So that kind of, summarizes sort of your three capabilities, the three foundational capabilities that in our opinion are critical. Now, what does the core product team look like? This is a question that I get asked very often, right? Which is, okay, so then who are the people who are doing this? I want to sort of disclaimer this, by saying that there are multiple teams that are involved at RBC in enabling this. However, there is a core persistent product team. So that is, the team that is 100% dedicated to this and works with all of our different partners across RBC to make this happen. And this is what that team looks like. So the point that I want to make is that it is 50% Convo designer and 50% developer, or sorry, 40% Convo designer, 40% developer. So really that equal sort of, weighting of developers and Convo designer. And it's actually really light on data scientists, right? I find that this is something that surprises people, right? Because because a lot of the times the assumption is made that chatbots and virtual assistants and voice interfaces is all about sophisticated machine learning and AI. But I think that at this point, this probably doesn't come to you as a surprise in this presentation, because I already emphasized that we are not doing the strategic choice that we made is that we don't do the NLU. At least in this use case, we are not doing the NLU work ourselves. We are using an external service. There are a few lessons learned along the way. So, I was in a position 3 years ago where there was no support for any of this. So I had to sell this strategy to our executives and get their support to build a team, to start doing this, to execute on a product roadmap and so on. And my biggest challenge to get buy-in at the beginning was that no one really understood conversational design. And so, just something to keep in mind, which is, if you're at that stage where you're trying to sell this idea or you're trying to secure funding in your company, or you're trying to get support, just know that conversational design will be the hardest to explain and get buy-in for. Yet this is the most critical for success. So make sure that you are using these words and exposing these concepts to your executive leaders and sponsors right from the beginning. Second is, what you're going to be fighting against are mindsets and concepts from the search engine realm. So when I first started out, the common assumption that was made was that you buy a bot from a vendor and you plop it on top of a content repository and you turn the switch on and magically, the bot now begins to serve up content. It's a search engine mindset, right? And so just know that that that's what's going to be happening, and just explicitly address those search engine style mindsets. I actually call those out, right? When I'm making presentations, I just explicitly said, hey, look, let's try to get out of the search engine mindset and get into the conversational mindset. This is something that's not just applicable to this. I think across the board, very often we find in enterprises, initiatives fail because they are treated as a project and not as a product. If you want to build a conversational AI capability, whether it's customer facing or employee facing, it has to be a product. This is not a data science project, or this is not a machine learning project. This is not a 6-month app dev lab. This is a persistent strategic product team, and that's what you want to sell. And then finally, the capabilities are likely, again, if you're in an enterprise setting in a large business, the capabilities are likely going to be spread across more than one innovation or AI team. So again, we're talking about conversational design, data science, digital app dev, architecture. So you really have to orchestrate those productive partnerships across the bank. And I would be remiss if I didn't, before I end, that I didn't mention, a quick sentence about what we see the future of conversational AI as at RBC. And again, as I think Nitin pointed at the future, our goal is to divert a significant fraction of customer and employee interactions to the tune of 60 to 70% to conversational interfaces in the next 1 to 3 years. This is not a dream. This is actually enshrined in our strategic goals and in our 5-year strategies. And with that, that's the end of my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Adi. Thank you for the lovely presentation and showing all the 3 steps which you have taken for the conversational AI and giving the 4 pointers what you learned during your journey and what is in store for the future. Lovely presentation. Thanks a lot. And I enjoyed being at your the presentation which you were speaking to. There are a couple of questions. So I can see in the Q&A section.
So you omitted an article.
Okay, you can also see that. Okay, sure.
Yeah, that's good. You caught me there, right? So I guess what I omitted was, so now that you mentioned that, I've actually omitted a few people. And what I've omitted are the leaders, some of the functional leaders. And I really only, identified the people who are kind of boots on the ground, right? Like people who are doing hands-on work. But if I could add sort of 3 more people to that list, one is that architect that provides that overarching leadership around, components and architecture and tech strategy in general. The second is a conversational design lead. So we have these 4 conversational designers, but there is actually a lead, right? And without that lead, you really need one person who really knows what they're doing, right? And then it's okay to have, people who have backgrounds in communication and UX and accessibility upskilled into conversation design. All of that works as long as you have a lead who really, really knows what they're doing. So that's a really good, that's a big one. And then the third one is like a data science lead. So we also have a functional lead who just really provides, leadership on, what kind of modeling approaches to try. When, certain modeling or certain algorithms don't work, then, where do you go from there and so on. So I think those are the 3 things that I missed, right? The functional leadership, right, in this space. So that's a good question. Thanks for catching that. Do you have any examples of ROI justification for a conversation? Yeah. So the ROI justification in almost all of our instances is based on headcount reduction in the advice center. So the business case that you're going to be making is that the call center is going to go down from 500 people to 400 people in 1 year, right? And again, I don't want to sound as like a job killer here, right? Like at least at RBC, these people are not getting fired or they're not getting laid off. They just so in fact, some of them actually become conversational designers, right? Which is really, really cool, right? Like as opposed to, and I think that is just a win-win, right? As opposed to being on the phone and answering the same monotonous question day after day, hour after hour, you now design these conversations, right? That solve that fix the problem for the user, kind of for good. So that's our hope. But yeah, that's ultimately the ROI. The business cases are built on the premise of staffing reduction in our advice centers. I hope that answered your question. And then the third one, how much time it could take to integrate chatbot and make it live for customers? So that's a great question. It really depends on your on the resources you have. So I'll give you two examples. It really depends on the amount of resources you have available and your sense of urgency. So, for example, in our internal use case, where we are building a chatbot for employees for IT support, we don't have millions of dollars to spend on bringing in, an external, like a paid vendor, middleware technology. And we also don't have the resources to build a huge product team. And but also, like, strategically speaking, from a competitive standpoint, we have a little bit more room in terms of it's okay if we take a year and a half to put a live chatbot out there. And so in the instance of our internal, where our budgets are smaller, the sense of urgency is there, but not to the same extent as the customer facing use case. It's the timelines are more like a year and a half. But on our customer facing side, it is completely different, right? So right now our aim is to have, so for example, the same goals that we have in our IT center spread over 3 years. We are trying to achieve similar goals like that in 1 year on our customer facing advice center, right? Just because the competitive pressures are just higher on the customer facing side. So it really comes down to your sense of urgency, right? It is possible to have to go from zero to a live customer facing chatbot with a few really cool capabilities in a matter of 4 to 6 months. That is possible if you have the sense of urgency, the resourcing, to back up that sense of urgency, really that strategic focus, right, for your company. But I've seen like a full spectrum, right? Like I've seen, people going from zero to live in 6 months. I've also seen people going zero to live in a year and a half. It really depends on how much of a strategic priority it is for you. I hope that answered your question.
Cool. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. Any questions, guys? Anything else? I think okay. So I think this was the last question, Avi. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well,
thank
thanks
you.
for having me.
Thank you for the lovely presentation, and we are glad to have you as a speaker.
Hey, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. So, guys, quickly moving on to our next presenter, we have Abhishek Breja, who was in Pfizer. He was the Vice President, Digital Transformation and Business Excellence. His topic for the day is Digital Transformation of Operations, how it must be done to strengthen the product market fit. So I'll let Abhishek do the talking and introduce everything to you. Over to you, Abhishek. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
Thanks.
My name is Abhishek Breja, and my area of specialization is digital transformation and business strategy. So I operate at the intersection of digital technologies, which includes AI, ML, intelligent automation, robotics, and business transformation. My background is mostly, for the last 15 years, I've been helping set up large transformation offices at Fortune 500 companies and kind of helping them transform business comprehensively with significant needle moving kind of impact to the bottom line. So I've worked across the value chain, and my charters are typically not limited to a function, but essentially across the value chain, mostly on the operations side, but also to some extent on the product side. And what I'm going to share with you is kind of how my thinking has evolved over the last 4 to 5 years in terms of how important it is for operational transformation to have the product mindset. And the previous speaker did touch upon it towards the tail end of his presentation when he talked about that this is not just should not be looked as a project, but should be looked as a product. I think the same goes true for pretty much all initiatives of operational transformation. And a big untapped value is when companies try to automate operations to get rid of labor cost and to make them more efficient and even more accurate, but without much consideration to how is that going to impact our end customers' product journey or product experience. And that's where the change is happening now. There is 10 times more value to be unlocked when you look at a transformation from a customer lens. Whether that transformation is in the back end, the back office operations or call center or wherever it is, one should always look at it from a customer lens because there is so much more value that you can gain by doing that. And so that's what I'm going to talk about in over the next 20 minutes. I'm going to share a presentation, a few slides, which is really just a framework of how to think about it, and open to questions at the end of that. You guys should be able to see my screen. Let me know if you don't. Can you see the screen? Hello? Can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Oh, were you able to see the screen?
Yeah, we were.
Okay, all right.
Not anymore, but previously we were.
Yeah, okay, so I was just making sure. All right. So an analogy that one can think of is losing weight, right? If you try to just do diet to lose weight, you may feel like you're succeeding in the short run, but you don't really. To lose weight and to be able to get good at your game, you have to do a comprehensive lifestyle change. And the same goes from what I'm kind of talking about from an operational perspective. There are 4 elements that are on the picture. One is operational excellence, which is making your operations more leaner, less expensive, and automation is just one of the lever and probably the most effective lever. The second is your technology stack, strengthening your core technologies, your foundational technology on which the company is going to compete in the market. And the third is like, how do you do product innovation in the market? And to bring it all together, there is an element of clarity of vision and focus that the company has. What's the mission that the company is working towards and how they're going to achieve it? So those are hold on one second. Sorry, there was an urgent call from my son. Those are like 4 elements that have to, all of those elements have to come together. If they don't come together in this manner where there is clarity of strategy, there will be confusion in terms of, this is kind of a picture that shows that, your operational teams are doing their own digital operations transformation, your technology teams are doing their own technology modernization, and your product teams are creating digital offerings in the market. Each one of them have their different vision, their different kind of mission in the market. And so this becomes a spaghetti party, as I call it, versus, this is a better slide, versus a unified approach where all of those 4 aspects of the business kind of work together. And so that's the difference between the 2 approaches. More and more, what I have seen in larger companies, there is a tendency to move towards spaghetti party, and this unified approach, although the C-levels may talk about it, but on the ground, it never gets translated. And that's where there is a big threat to the larger companies from the startups and the unicorns that are coming out in the market, particularly in the fintech area and the banking and financial services, where they are laser focused on what they're trying to do. and their speed to market is much faster because they are laser focused and because all of those four elements are working, working together and are better synchronized. So let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into what do we mean by each one of those. And I'll start by giving an example. So I was working with a company and we had a call center discussion before this. So I'll talk about a similar kind of example. We had back office operations to process claims for cell phones. And cell phone warranty is a extended warranty program. So if you are at AT&T, Verizon, or one of those cell phone carrier customers, you will have an option of buying an extended warranty on your phone, which also gives you an option to upgrade your phone anytime. What that means is you can take your phone back to AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, whoever, and tell them that, after a year or after 6 months, whatever, and you could say that I want to upgrade the phone. They'll give you some money for the previous phone and then give you a new phone. And there was the insurance part of it, which is when you lose your phone or damage your phone, you can also get the new phone delivered to you within a day. Now, that process of insuring the phone is typically done by an insurance company. You don't get to know that as a AT&T customer. There are fine prints in your contract which says that this will be serviced by an insurance company. Typically, Assurian and Assurant are some of the companies that do that. Now, the goal was for that claims processing department, can we automate the work to reduce the size of the department and the cost of the department? And there were some 30 people working in that function initially. So one option is you can use robotics. You can also use some elements of AI and ML, but basically automate that process, which is largely working through different systems, swivel chair kind of process, because you have to tap into different applications that do not talk to each other. An insurance company has a client, let's say T-Mobile and AT&T. So the AT&T has their own system, T-Mobile have their own system. And when an insurance claim comes in, you have to go into those systems, extract data, enter data, stuff like that. Now we automated that and we got nominal savings of 10-15% cost reduction. But we took that data and then we exposed that data to the call center where the calls would come in for those insurance claims follow-ups. Now, once that data is exposed to the call center folks don't have to log into different systems to answer those calls, and they could just use that data to answer the calls. Taking it one step further, you could also use that in your IVR system where many of those answers can be responded by the system itself. You don't have to never, transfer the call to a live agent. That sharing of that data that we collected by digitizing the process, had we just stopped at automating the process, we won't have shared that data. And that created 3 times to 5 times more value in cost reduction than the original value that was done in the claims function. So claims function created, 15% reduction and around 4 FTEs reduction. But the call center function generated around 15 to 20 FTE reduction. So that was much bigger than the, just the claims function. Now you take that same data and expose it to the customer, just like a Domino's pizza kind of, delivery status where the customer can see where their claims are through an app or through chat messages, as a kind of starting point. That creates 10 times more value because now you are making customers, giving them the information that they need, and you don't even get the calls into the call center. So that created much more value. Take it one step further beyond that, we created an API around it, and you expose that API and you tell your customers in the market that if you work with us, because you're an insurance company, if you work with us, we are going to give you an API where your customers do not have to go out of your app, and within your app meaning the carrier's app, which is a AT&T or a T-Mobile's app, they can look at the status of their claim. They can know how to file the claim, and the entire journey is done within the app. So that creates 10x more value, and not only 10x more value from a operating income perspective, but from a competitive perspective in the market, that you're much more competitive because you have a differentiation, and that's an example of product market fit. So what I'm trying to suggest there with that example was we created almost 100x more value by taking an operational initiative and linking it to the customer and the product itself. And that's the idea behind what I'm talking about. So what you see here on the left in the business value section is how much business value can you create by an initiative, and what you're seeing on the x-axis is how much time will it take to create that value, and what is the fitness level that you will achieve as you go on to that path. So as you can see, operational excellence, there are tools available in the market. We looked at call center automation just now by converting to chat. Those tools are readily available in the market, and you can get fairly quick returns on those. But in the longer term, you're not going to be able to create sustainable competitive advantage, because it will become pretty much a competitive floor that everybody will be, it becomes table stake. And so you're not going to differentiate yourself. On the other hand, when you look at play creatively, which is the product innovation, if you are creating true product differentiations through AI and ML, it may take some time because those things do not happen overnight. You have to have the data and the AI and ML talent, and all that takes time. But in the longer run, that is going to create business value that will keep growing. And what binds it all together is to build strength, which is through technology and data. At the end of the day, if you do not have a very strong digital stack as an enterprise, you will never be able to create AI-based differentiated products in the market. And so that's the red line in the middle that connects operational excellence to product innovation. And all of that has to be done with clarity of mission and culture of the company, which is clearly moving towards a particular direction, and everybody's clear about what that is. So that's kind of what the idea is, that for larger companies to be able to compete with digital natives, they cannot look at these elements of operations, product, IT, and the company's mission as four separate things. They have to look at, and particularly operations, technology, and IT, and product, they have to look at all of those three in a singular vision, in a comprehensive, well-aligned vision. All programs that you're doing in operations should ask, how is that going to strengthen my technology, what we are doing here? And how is that going to strengthen the product in terms of that initiative that we are doing here? So that's kind of the idea. And the other element within that is kind of in continuation to that is, do not use band-aids to hide the wounds. A lot of time in operations, we are doing task automation. We're not looking at end-to-end automation of the entire customer journey, let alone product. And one of the best examples of this is the mushroom growth of RPA which is robotic process automation initiatives. And the difference between, sometimes robotic process automation is useful. It's basically screen scraping. But if you use that as a hammer looking for the nail, then pretty much, everything can be automated to some extent through RPA, but it's not going to be scalable, and it's not going to create any technology or product advantage for your company, in the long run. So that's kind of, I'm sorry about the background noise. There's some gardening stuff going on outside. So that's uh, that's another thing to keep in mind as you do operational transformation within financial services or outside. Now, in financial services, this is becoming particularly important because of what's happening in the market within banks and financial services companies. Is that the startups and the fintechs in the market are kind of the challenger banks are creating an urgent situation where companies are really panicking to compete with those fintechs and startups. They're trying to, you know, tell everybody in the company to digitize and reduce cost, create scalable operation. Because the basic theme there is one, you are going after the unbankables and the underserved population. And banks never considered it very important till recently, once they've seen companies like Square and Robinhood and those kind of companies, including some of these new Bitcoin related companies that are kind of going after the customers and the big customer base, which was not important to the big banks. So to serve those kind of customers, you have to have very lean operations. Your operations has to be highly scalable. Any undifferentiated heavy lifting of operations should be automated completely. And you also need to create new kind of products that are designed very differently with a self-service kind of mindset, where the servicing cost, it's basically software is eating, finance in many ways. And so in a desire to compete with those startups, there has been this mushroom growth of initiatives in large banks and financial services to kind of tell everybody in the company, go do digitization. And a lot of that digitization is done in this band-aid fashion, which is going to be counterproductive even in a very short period of time. So I suspect that next year we will find a lot of these initiatives have created so much technical debt that banks are kind of now, reassessing the portfolio and rationalizing it. We already touched upon this slide, of how a spaghetti party environment is getting created because of that. And finally, so to create a more comprehensive strategy, as I am suggesting, one needs to look at how does an intelligent automation COE must be built. And there are four critical pieces to that. One is the org structure, which is how the team is structured. Where does it report to? What is the charter of the team and how clear that is? The second is more deep dive into the charter in terms of the functional scope, the financial goals and roadmap. Third is the approach that they take, and we talked about the approach for the last few slides. And finally, the governance. So on the org structure side, it is very important to have a very, very strong sponsorship from a C-level executive, ideally a CEO or COO, but with strong sponsorship from CIO as well. But the main sponsor has to be on the business side. Where do you house this department, in IT or business, is a big question. And in my humble opinion, it should always be housed in business. IT is an enabler, but it should be housed in the business. The leader who lead this work has to be a practicing, AI, ML kind of digital guy or girl, because if she is coming from a general process engineering background, then she would not be able to appreciate the nuances of it. And if she's coming from as a practitioner of digital, that's what gives her the superpower to create a compelling vision, which is centered around making products in this space, as opposed to trying to just, automate processes and do marginal improvements. And the skill set of the team, I think there are three skill sets. One is strong data science skill set, strong process transformation skill set, and strong skill set in digital tools and technologies, whether it's AI enabled tools, and I differentiate between data scientists and those skill sets of business process automation tools, robotic automation tools, and and other tools like that. And more of these tools are getting low code, no code, so they should be democratized. From a charter perspective, the functional scope, the financial goals cannot be marginal improvements, but has to be transformational. So you should be looking at anything around 30% or more kind of improvement in the metric, operational metric. Otherwise, it becomes a lean kind of Six Sigma kind of team, which should not be the approach. From an approach perspective, we talked about some of those things. We also heard the previous speaker talk about build versus rent. I think that's an important concept. Do not recreate the wheel, where either it is, if creating your own technology is not giving you any competitive advantage in the market, which you can protect, or it's not creating an asset that you can sell. If those two conditions are not there, then there is no reason to build it. They just buy or rent it. Democratization of these tools is very important. IT will not be able to serve the business needs. There is so much need coming to IT that you will be stuck in the backlog. And so it's important to give this in the hands of the business while IT still governs it, and make sure that it is done with an architectural integrity of what IT has decided. And from a governance perspective, it's important to have consistent value tracking. The fiducial responsibility of CFO is very strong to make sure that whatever is being done in these kind of initiatives truly create value on the bottom line. Because most of these business cases are fictitious, and they are kind of, on paper, they all look good, but in reality, they don't really do something meaningful to the financials of the company. Many a times, not always, of course. And then, the whole idea of transformation is about creating digital maturity that is differentiating the company in the market. And if it doesn't do that, then you're being too short, trivial, and that's not going to be enough to compete in the market. So that's kind of pretty much what I wanted to cover. I mean, the last point I'll make is big banks and financial services companies, if they don't fundamentally transform their approach towards the business, the customers, but also the operations, they know that this for sure, that the new fintech companies and challenger banks are going to completely disrupt them. And one of the largest bank in the country, JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, said that we're afraid shitless. And that summarizes the state of these large financial services companies, where they are, especially after COVID, and what they have witnessed in the last 1.5 years. So digital transformation is a must for their survival. It's an existential crisis for everyone. And that's it. I hope it was useful.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Sure, Abhishek. I think it was a very lovely presentation, and you showed the insight what steps we should take in streamlining the digital transformation from the operational front. So very useful. The last 4 points which you made was excellent. Thanks a lot for sharing the insight and the thought process of you. Thanks a lot. So, any question, guys? We can take 1 or 2 questions if you have. we'll wait for some time. So obviously the slides, there's one question by Manning. So will these guys' slides be sent out to the participants? So Manning, we are making it live. So every presentation is going live on our YouTube channel and the Facebook channel. So if you subscribe to our channel, you can see all the presentation anytime. Hope that solves the purpose. Any questions, guys, which you want to ask to Abhishek, you can post it in the Q&A section. Thank you, Abhishek. In case any question comes up, I'll let you know. Thanks a lot for the lovely presentation. Hope to see you in the near future as well.
Thank you. Cheers.
So guys, moving on to our last presentation for the day, we have Timothy Young, who is from EY, and his topic is leveraging AI, ML, and other advanced technologies to fight fin crime. So over to you, Timothy.
Sounds good. Thank you, Nitin, and thank you, Abhishek and Adi, for two very insightful presentations. Just gonna share my screen here. Sorry, IT challenges.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, it's probably pretty common for someone who works in IT, right? Let's see if this works. It looks like it did not. Try to use a different screen. Okay, you know what? I'll just share my entire screen.
Yes.
Can you all see my screen now?
Not till now.
Looks like it's not letting me share my applications. It's only letting me share Microsoft Edge tabs, which is weird.
Okay, Edge, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone. We're just getting this sorted out. Let's see here. Can you see my screen?
Not till now. I think on that day you showed the screen, correct?
Yeah, but I was showing a tab from my browser. Okay, you know what? Let me save my presentation in a PDF, and then I will open it with the browser. Then I should then be able to share my screen.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's a new platform, right? So we're all learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, I think this should work now. Okay, share tab. All right. Is it working?
Not till now. Anyone can see the screen? Or I'm the only one who cannot see this. Can anyone confirm?
It says it's sharing this tab to znhd.floor.bz.
No, we are not able to see the screen.
That's weird. Let me try one more time. Okay, how about now? Can you see my screen?
No, Timothy. I think you have to share the entire screen and then click on.
No, I did. It didn't work when I hit sharing my entire screen. Okay, you know what, Nitin, would it be easier if I email you the PDF if you don't mind sharing
Please do
your
that.
screen instead? Okay,
Please do that. Please do that. Arvind?
all right. Sorry everyone for the wait. We'll get started momentarily. Hopefully it's not well, hopefully this is the only time that you would have a speaker run into this issue, because I think it's running on so a lot of folks are like, why are you
On
using
that day, I
Microsoft
think you
Edge?
shared the
But
screen. On that day, the
yeah,
screen was shared and it was showing
it worked
properly.
on Microsoft Edge last time, but like UI, I'm using a UI laptop, and obviously Microsoft Edge is the browser of choice because we're a Microsoft partner. But yeah,
Okay.
hopefully that gets sorted out. Or Nitin, did you get my email?
Let me check.
Thank you. Okay, cool. Well, we'll try something new. If you hide the bar on the right-hand side, Nitin, I'll get started, and then I will ask you to help me move along with the slides. Can you hide the panel on the right-hand side by clicking on the arrow, just slightly higher towards the left? Yeah. Oh, you got it. Click on it. Oh, no. The little arrow. Yes. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. I'm here today to talk about leveraging AI, ML, and other advanced technologies to fight financial crimes. So, first of all, my name is Timothy Young. I'm an associate director in the client technology group in Ernst & Young. So, EY traditionally is known as professional service firm. We provide services in accounting, in tax, assurance, consulting, strategy, and transaction. So probably one of the last few names you might think about when it comes to talking about AI, ML, emerging technologies and capabilities. But what we've done over the past 4 or 5 years is we did close to $1 billion of USD in investment to invest in advanced product capabilities, building out technology capabilities. But very importantly, similar to what Abhishek and Adi spoke to earlier, really using a product mindset in productizing capabilities that we can re-leverage and redeploy for our clients and help them solve some burning issues in the business through emerging technologies. I personally am the product management lead in what we call the regional tech ops team in Canada, where we build net new product assets in Canada for Canadian clients, but we also leverage global product capabilities that were built across the globe and redeploy them, customize them to fit and solve client problems specifically in the Canada region, leveraging capabilities that work well in other regions. So enough about me. If you can flip to the next page, Nitin. It looks like you found a way to present your screen on that. Perfect. So, for financial crimes, what are fin crimes? Enough said, fin crimes, and typically some common type or forms of fin crimes you see are fraud, money laundering, bribery and corruption, so on and so forth. Now, maybe let's do just a quick poll question. If Arvin, you can drop that into the poll section. How much do you think is the estimated annual cost of money laundering and associated crimes? There should be a few choices in the poll windows coming up. Yeah, if you want to take some time, pick an answer, pick your guess. Maybe I'll give everyone 10, 15 seconds. Pick the number that makes the most sense to you. All right, looks like a lot of you picked the number 900 million. So, Nitin, if you flip to the next slide, it's actually quite a sizable number, 1.4 trillion to 3.5 trillion USD for estimated annual cost of money laundering and associated crimes. As financial crimes reaches new levels of sophistication, especially now in COVID world, post-pandemic, companies, especially companies in the banking and financial sector, they're now often trying to seek a balance between efficiency and effectiveness to disrupt these crimes, because crimes obviously are very costly, but it also costly to try to minimize the amount of fin crimes that come about in the sector. And in this complex, ever-changing world, financial crime risk basically are expanding as one of the largest systemic risks to the whole global economy, and it often yields very devastating impacts to business operations and communities. And many of you probably remember the big news such as Madoff, the Ponzi schemes and all that. But there are a lot of those that don't necessarily make it to the press, but combine to huge amount of losses for organizations across the world. And financial crime is really becoming an enormous problem with unsustainable costs. And FSOs, financial service organizations, are starting to a lot of times struggling to contain the compliance costs, and the threat of money laundering continues, also with new form of different digital currencies, with cryptocurrencies and all that kind of stuff. So there's an increasing need for us to band together to change and to innovate, and really staying at the forefront of the industry's defense strategy against financial crimes. There's a lot of opportunities for us to leverage in technology, but we need to combine technologies, experience, and proven methodologies to navigate through the risk associated with financial crimes. If you can flip to the next slide, Tim. So what does that mean, in terms of the landscape now after COVID-19 has started? One of the things that we see a lot is there's, a big shift in the day-to-day fiscal norms in terms of the behaviors of consumers all across the world. What does that mean, in terms of that change in behavior pattern, ways, or even how they buy things? A lot of them spend significantly more time purchasing online. That often leads to an increase in difficulty to utilize historical patterns, to identify anomalies, irregularities, and all that kind of stuff, because, the patterns are shifting. It's a lot harder to identify now, with a lot of noise in the data and all that kind of stuff, that is made about with the pandemic hitting pretty much every part of the world. And as part of the digital acceleration, partly due to COVID, bringing forward a lot of the digital future, a lot of the products and services we see are now shifted online, on accelerated timeline. And, that means more complexity, more uncertainty, and a lot more transactions as well. There's also, a lot more fin crimes that's happening in the dark web as well. So that's another challenge that has been accelerated by the COVID situation. And then thirdly, volatility with unstable economy across the world, lots of economic stimulus packages, relief packages, basically, kind of changes the flow of things, very rapidly compared to, the pre-COVID world. And what do all of these means? It really all leads to one thing, which is heightened risk in financial crimes. So enough talking about the crimes themselves. If you flip to the next slide, Nitin, what are some key aspects and opportunities we have identified, in fin crime prevention and more efficient ways of, meeting compliance standards? Main categories we're looking at here, includes KYC, know your customer, that includes anything from new customer onboarding to doing due diligence on these customers on a regular basis for compliance purposes, and also refreshing and remediate customer information throughout time. And, if you look at, the three other items here, it really speaks to a lot of growing trends in the tech industry on, how these aspects can be managed and made efficient through technology, such as AML, anti-money laundering, monitoring, and investigations. We see things like investigations as a service popping up. There's a lot of talks of automation, so investigation automation. There's transaction monitoring platform as a service now as well, and even tuning as a service. And for the traditional function of list screening, we now also have and you can probably find a lot of product offerings in the industry. For just from a simple Google search, there are screening platform as a service, there are testing and tuning as a service, and investigations as a service. And for KYC, again, know your customer utility. There's risk depiction through advanced technologies, a great area of opportunities, and holistic screening and aggregation of data and integrated technology and operations. So all of this speak to this huge amount of categories and a massive catalog of capabilities that companies in the banking and financial sector can leverage to make the process of fighting financial crime detection and meeting compliance standards, regulations more effectively through technology. But where do we start? So if you can flip to the next slide, Nitin. So now let's look at the use case of how we can use AI and ML and other emerging technologies to address these financial crime challenges. Now let's start with looking at a main set of categories of challenges in fin crime. Oftentimes we see for many decades, most of these processes are pretty, manual, sometimes mundane. Crime review and investigation procedures are highly manual in nature and super time consuming. Not the most fun, kind of responsibilities when you have to do it like repeatedly so many times. And, oftentimes that also leads to higher rate of errors and lack of consistency because, we're all only humans, right? And then there's a lack of risk prioritization. So obviously, there's inherent risk in every profile, every situation, any scenarios. But the current fin crime systems, they generate a lot of alerts that requires review and intervention by a human being, but not a lot of indication of risk or even generally a systemic way or an intelligent way to identify, hey, which tickets or which cases should I be focusing on. And in the risk analysts are often required to make decisions based on very manual end-to-end review of information, essentially in a vacuum. And disparate systems, investigative activities are performed across many different tools, systems, ecosystems, and it often results in process inefficiencies, like just having to go through so many different data sources, systems, and try to find answers here and there. There isn't really much consistency, in the old world where AI, ML, RPA, those capabilities are not yet quite introduced. Now, obviously, artificial intelligence and machine learning, robotic process automation, all sounds really good, for addressing these fin crime challenges. But what are the challenges in deploying them? Because if it's so easy and if it's so accessible, everyone would be doing it by now, right? We're really starting as an industry, rapid acceleration, and these are the challenges that you usually run into when you try to deploy them at scale, at pace, at speed, with AI, ML, and other emerging techs. So, conceptually, it's difficult to understand, especially from a business perspective. For the management teams to implement advanced technology, they a lot of times don't have clarity on the exact quantifiable benefits and how to implement. There's a continued underestimation of the knowledge and effort required to actually develop effective solutions. It sounds all cool, and like sometimes it sounds easy, not so complicated on paper, but in implementation it gets quite challenging, especially if the organization is doing it for the first time and do not have existing experience to leverage on. Then the other point here is, the constraints on resourcing. There's oftentimes very high demand across very limited pool of data scientists and technologists across an organization, across competing priorities within the organization. So, clearly leadership, hint and product management as a function to support as well becomes very critical as well in terms of determining where the priorities lie, and allowing us to really focus on getting the resources to get these projects in. And then production challenges as well, right? Complex nuances in building, testing, and actually deploying these capabilities into prod. And a lot of industry deployments take 3 or 4 or even more quarters, entire year. And these are some of the challenges that oftentimes not only makes the implementation of these capabilities challenging, but also makes it a little hard for some organizations to really embrace prioritizing these work. But at the end of the day, seeing the marriage of the two, there are challenges obviously on both sides of the coins, or both sides of things, challenges in the traditional processes, challenges in the new ways of doing things. Oftentimes what we see, especially in our work with our clients at EY, is any successful application of AI, ML, and emerging technologies requires marrying the business needs with technical expertise, technical capabilities, and very importantly, a strategy for deployment. We love talking about strategy, obviously, as a professional services firm. We love to talk about the vision, but the deployment plan, a strategy for deployment, lining up the resources, and all the traditional project management things also come in hand to hand with, product management priorities, product management, road mapping strategy, and determining priorities comes hand in hand with the project delivery, making sure that, we are, able to structure it in a way that makes sense for the business. If you flip to the next slide, want to wrap up, my presentation here by talking about an actual product that, EY has built internally in the global team. Our American team in the US built out a product called the Cognitive Investigator. And, it's a platform where we deploy capabilities like artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation, optical character recognition, and natural language processing to improve efficiency and quality of, everything end-to-end compliance life cycle. And, you might think, hey, sounds like a very specific product, but essentially, these are actually capabilities that, can be offered in different packages by different vendors. Now, obviously at UI, we have an end-to-end solution, but, these are essentially, you can see them as use cases that, can be deployed for your organization, depending on where your most important urgent needs are, in the fight of thin crime. So go through them pretty quickly because I know we're running short on time. I blame it a little bit on the technology for, not being able to share the screen earlier. But, essentially, let's start with automated information and document sourcing, with our Cognitive Investigator and, with similar products out in the market to, being able to leverage APIs, building APIs, but leveraging existing APIs, as well as scraping capabilities. We can source documents from internal within the organization, in the public, and from third-party data sources as well, which significantly reduces manual processes. Automate document classification and information extraction is about, using AI and ML to automatically classify documents, extract key information and insights, and saving a lot of time of the analyst and reducing human errors. Automated negative news, pretty interesting. Basically, having a news engine to automatically garner and assess adverse or, essentially potentially bad media coverage associated with the investigations and the Know Your Customer KYC cases. So hence reducing time required for negative news manual reviews scouring through the internet and all that. Smart decision making is really about using predictive models to prioritize anti-money laundering and sanction alerts for review and shifting the focus to higher risk. Automated narrative generation is a use case where we apply natural language understanding, which is touched upon by our previous speakers today, to extract key information from upstream systems and create a draft narrative to save analysts the time to have to manually put that narrative together. The model can neatly put together something that the analyst can start using, and again, improves consistency. And last couple here, entity resolution and address validation really means using technology to resolve duplicates and create a single customer view, improving overall quality of the reviews, accuracy of the customer profile, and minimizing redundancies. And, policy administration for KYC, programmatic generation of customer due diligence and enhanced due diligence requirements based on key attributes such as like entity types, jurisdictions, and special products, and all that kind of stuff, special requirements. Just another really strong use case to significantly reduce administrative efforts that is required, to be able to be effective in the fight of financial crimes. So with that, that's what I wanted to share in terms of like financial crimes, use cases, and how we use product capabilities, to really leverage AI, ML, automation capabilities to make life easier for everyone. And hopefully together we can reduce, that big number we see in the beginning in terms of losses related to money laundering and a lot of financial crimes out in the banking and financial sector. One thought I would like to leave with you all is, if you can flip to the next slide, Nitin. It's really just around. It's not about having to do everything at all at the same time, right? It's really about prioritizing the core needs in the life cycle of compliance, and knowing which part takes up the most of your resources, most prone to error, and really start identifying solutions. Now, obviously, talking to EY is an option, but there's a lot of other market solutions out there, and consult experts in the field and designing the right solution. Again, applying the product management concepts and project management concepts to ensure strategic and delivery alignment. Well, thank you so much for your time today. That's all from my end today. And thanks for having me today, Nitin and everyone.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you for the lovely presentation and showing to the audience how AI, ML, and other advanced technologies, you can use the platform like what you have in EY as well to fight the fin crime, which is on a higher side. I think after the COVID, all have gone digital, and crimes have also gone digital. So thanks for showing the details, and it's a lovely presentation. Thank you. I think all the three presentations were very exciting, and we had lovely insights from all the three ones. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Timothy. And Adi, I think, must be there somewhere. So thank you, Adi, as well. So before wrapping up, any questions which you have for Timothy, guys, or for Abhishek? Abhishek and Timothy are here. So any questions which you have, because this is the last slide, last presentation we already have done. So any questions which you have, you can type in the chat box in the Q&A section. We'll wait for 30 seconds. If any question comes up, we can take it. Otherwise, it was a lovely session from all of you guys, and I think we have a lovely insight. A lot of things are shared which I know as in an organization you cannot think of when you come to events and when you listen to the quality speakers. Everybody has their own standpoint. They're doing well in their particular area. So this gives a variety of knowledge repository to the people as well. So I think thanks a lot, guys, for giving the insight. Just to wrap up, now, if no question is there, I'll just wrap up the webinar which we had today, so that it gives a understanding of what we did. So just to wrap up, today's webinar is broadcasted, or you can say it's going live. It's there already in YouTube and Facebook page of our company. So request all of you to go and see the recording anytime. Anytime you can go and you can cross-check. We would like to thank our technology partner, Digit7, for helping us organize some great events like this. To our community partners, speakers, that is Adi, Abhishek, Timothy, and all the attendees who have taken time out of the busy schedule. I know the time difference is there in all the EST, CET, Pacific times. A lot of time zones are there. And especially Timothy, I know it's a very early morning. Timothy is in Vancouver. So he started at 6:30 something a.m. in the morning. So I know it's not easy to come out from your busy schedule and speak and attend the same. So thanks to all of you. Lastly, please log on to our website and like our social media channels, which will give you a lot of knowledge sharing topics, details, announcements of our next events, and other things which will help you register and attend the future events as well. Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Have a lovely
Thank you so
day
much
ahead.
for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice one. Bye, everyone.
You too. Take care.